To a space now in Gugulethu that encourages reading in black neighborhoods while fostering appreciation for books and culture that is surrounding them. This place called Lumkile's Book Joint is a symbol of knowledge and culture, hoping to redefine the concept of community engagement. Nasiphi is live for us at Lumkile's Book Joint. Nasiphi, good to have you. What are you learning?
Well, I can tell you that I'm learning a lot and learning new phrases as well. Speaking to Lumkile this morning, saying that this is a space that is curated. It took about 32 years of him collecting books, very interesting and very particular books, and putting them in the space and also being intentional about where he opens this book joint, particularly in the heart of Gugulethu, and also the work that they do in other provinces when it comes to literature as well, and the books that they present to people. But, you know, they also have an annual book catalogue award where they hold it annually, and just last month they had the third annual one. I'm now going to be speaking to Ongeziwe, who is a published author who writes poetry but in an indigenous language. So you put pen to paper and you present this to people. But how important was it for you to not only write poetry but also write in isiXhosa?
I always view myself as a cold writer because I never studied literature and so on. It's something that I never thought up until my friend would say that, you know, at some point, as much as you have a gift, God, there's someone that need to be sent by God to unlock what you have, but God is instilled with you. So it was when I was at matric, and then grade 11, and then there was this teacher who was make education interesting. So we used to love the teacher. He make everything want us to read. That's where I started to pay attention on reading and writing. And then my turning point was in grade 12, where I read this book by famous writer, novelist, Professor Gugulethu. I read it within a week, and then I wrote a first poem. I find it very important because, you know, at some point there are a lot of books that has been written that speak about us as indigenous people, but they are written in other languages. We'll find that it goes to a limited audience. Hence, I find it very crucial for us to write with our own languages and writing books that doesn't limit people, speaking about culture, but also in terms of leadership and politics and economy and business and so on.
You were talking to us earlier that there's 4 books that you've authored, 2 of those authored on your own, 2 of those co-authored. There's an interesting one that actually caught my attention, the one that speaks about COVID. Talk to us about that one.
That one, there were a lot of things that were happening before COVID actually occurred. Like there are funny stories. There were drought at Eastern Cape. There was drought at Eastern Cape. So even the cover on its own, it's very interesting. So I sat down and I made observation that some of each and every nation, they are cooking. And it seems that we as people who write with our own languages, we always, go and beg for knowledge and our stories to other people who write with their own language. So I said to the summary of the book that, you know, each and every nation is cooking. Therefore, it is vital to each and every nation to write with its own language so that the next generation will know what was happening, you know, in our days, instead of us, you know, go and search for our knowledge and stories to other people who wrote about us with their own language.
Are you seeing an appetite for African literature? Seeing that you have about 4 books under your belt, are you seeing this appetite of people wanting to read more indigenous books or written in indigenous languages?
Yeah, people are thirsty. I always do a research. I still recall last year when I went to Oh, something happened before I went to this particular department. It's provincial libraries here at Western Cape. So there was this author, just to cut a long story short, there are people who open, who become publishers, not because they want to expose our talent, but for their personal gain. So there was this author was a victim. So we ended up, because I'm also helping indigenous authors to distribute their books. Yes. So it happened that it was a blessing in disguise. We distribute book with other agents that sell to provincial libraries. So it happened that the book, there were a lot of errors. And then I went there direct, because the books, they were not yet distributed to other libraries, because normally they buy books and then they distribute to all libraries at the Western Cape. And I went there to the book selectors. They said, according to our data, your books is xhosa poetry. There are few people who read those books. So there's a benchmark that you need to break and so on. So I took that as a challenge. I told them that, there's a book that is coming. And I already proven, because there's this book is still selling even now called Uthando Alutando. I published a book titled Ingoma Yendalo. Within a month, they bought about 100 books. So I also saw the people who encouraged me to trade content. I sometimes see on TikTok, people they are buying through TikTok. Because what I do, I read books playing with visuals, my books. And interesting enough, people who read our books are ordinary people. I will find that people who, some call taxi drivers, they buy books. It's so interesting that people are tasty for our books that are written with their only stories that relate to them, that they can relate to.
We can't ignore that we're in a knowledge hub, Lumkile's book joint, in the heart of Gugulethu. We know about, the issues of literacy when it comes to young children. How important is it for disadvantaged communities to have, or rather build relations or relationship with books and also reading, seeing that you're also a published author? And how can we get more and more people to start reading?
We need to use our available resources, because we can complain and complain, but if we do not use available resources, like even if you can check by social media, according to our observation, South Africa is a toxic country, and we are a generation that want a miracle. And each and everything that has been exposed to us, we consume without being critical readers. Therefore, it is vital for communities like this to build thinkers, and those people who are fortunate enough in terms of finances to contribute to spaces like this, so that we can build communities where there are thinkers and critical readers and writers, so that we cannot have people who are just reacting out of emotion and so on.
Where do you see African literature in the coming years?
There's a need for it. I'm also a distributor. I don't want to name the institution, but if you go to my website, you will see there's a need for our indigenous books. So, as Africans, we have abundance of everything. Everything that we have is very interesting to the world. So it's a matter of us to invest in those things. It's more like when you have abundance and then get recognized by someone or a stranger without knowing you that you have this potential. So there's a need for it, and we still, there's still a market for it. It's a matter of, for us to invest in our own things. And those people, it doesn't have to be institutions that are relevant to us. If we as people, we are unique. If we have finances, come and invest in this thing, and then we will, people like spaces like this, we will have an impact in our communities.
You were telling me a story earlier on, but we know that there's a saying in isiXhosa saying that isiXhosa stoligwa, loosely translated, that, there are certain expressions in isiXhosa that you cannot translate into another language. But you were saying that writing in your own mother tongue at times allows you to express more than you could when you receive certain limitations with other languages. Narrate that story about the houses back in the Eastern Cape that are in 1 yard for us.
Firstly, if you look as African or indigenous, whatever that we do, we make sure that is in harmony with nature. So I wrote a book entitled Utando Olutando. So I look at how we were raised, our upbringing, and also how our parents used to build houses. So you'll find that those Rondaven that we see as we can be viewed as the people who are backward. They mean a lot to us in terms of uniting the family. You'll find that there's a family will set a fire, and then we sit around the fire, we tell those stories. You can even tell a child when he's having a bad habit. But in our days, you'll find that we're building those fancy houses where there's a division, and so you end up sitting with a stranger in your house. There's a social media, everything that is exposed to us. So